remotely. Because we're meeting in person and remotely, we ask for your patience with any delays and technical issues. And for friends in the room here, I will just, clerks pointed out to me that some of the microphone lights may not be working. So just mind those hot mics. I think our friends at our IT will help us with that. If members wish to ask questions of staff or to speak, please make sure your video is on and raise your hand or unmute your mic and indicate your intention to speak, and I'll fire up the speakers list. If members wish to place motions on any items that are on the agenda, please email and text your motion in advance to the clerk at tmac@toronto.ca. And when voting on an item or a motion, I would ask members to turn on your video and raise your hand to indicate your vote. If there's a recorded vote, I'll ask you to state if you're in favor or opposed. We will start with the land acknowledgement, and although we're in different locations, the Toronto Music Advisory Committee acknowledges the land that we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. I will start with a confirmation of the minutes. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes of the meeting on September 24th. Lisa, online there. All in favor? Carried. Very good. We have 4 items of business today, and I would recommend that the committee consider MA 5.3, which is the relocation of the It's Okay Community Arts Studio, as the first item for discussion. Deputy Mayor Malik has some time constraints this morning, and that's in her ward, and I think you have a motion or something to that extent as well. So if everyone's okay with starting with that, and then we'll proceed with the agenda as prescribed. All in favor? Everybody okay? All right, we'll start with that 5.3. I think we have Jason Bragg. Bragg? Yeah. Okay, very good. Who's a project officer development with Parks, Forestry, and Recreation, and Scott Barrett. You're going to give us an update and the TMAC members on the work to identify new space for It's Okay Community Arts Studio, and for TMAC members, you'll recall this was space that was identified for the city to support this organization. And I think the lease is up on that, if that's correct. But you'll give us the update in your effort to find some new space. Do you want to speak to the item at all, or bring the committee up to speed on what you're doing, or do you want just us to go straight to questions?
I can speak.
Okay, very good. Well, then we'll turn it over to you.
So just PFR has updated the timeline for demolition. As we know, it's purchased using Parkland Acquisition Reserve Fund, so it has to be converted into a park, but we've tried to accommodate this interim use as long as possible. Through more detailed analysis of other demolition projects, the procurement and commencement timelines for that allow us to extend the lease for 3 additional months until the end of June 2025. The original was end of March 2025. So that gives 3 additional months for to continue to work to find It's Okay a new home. And I'll pass it off to Scott to speak to those efforts.
Thanks. Through the chair, we have been working with It's Okay on a site that became vacant this summer at 16 Ossington, former firehouse that was last had a detox or addiction support center in it. We've reviewed the building at a very high level. There's nothing immediate threat to life safety or reasons that occupancy couldn't happen there. We have a building condition assessment that's nearly 10 years old, but EDC has wisely requested a new one to be done, should be completed this calendar year, which will let us know if there's any issues that we need to watch out for as we entertain a new tenant. Both EDC and It's Okay have been toured through the building separately and together. I can't remember. But there is definitely interest there. And I believe right now we're waiting to hear back as to whether the property could work for them. It's about 5,800 square feet, so it's a little bit smaller than what they've got right now, but could potentially work as a space for them.
Okay, great. Are there any questions of staff? Throw it to Councillor Malik.
Oh, no, there it works. Thank you very much, and I really appreciate the effort around this. I just have one quick question, just in terms of some of the technical work that's happening as we move forward, and to what degree, kind of broader engagement in the neighborhood and in the community as part of the work moving forward in securing a space.
Through the chair, right now I think we're just kind of waiting to see if there is a real interest from It's Okay. They've had a look, and I think that there's an initial interest, but we need to understand if there's anything to move on. Once we have that, I think we'd want to be in touch with your office to see if there's any community consultation we should be doing with you about that, and what to expect as the site gets fitted up for those uses.
And just my other question, and we've raised it here at the TMAC table as well, is, the example and the experience with It's Okay in a space that had been identified in the way that the Queen Street space had been to the city, making sure that we are using that not just as a one-off, but as an example of how we can address the arts and culture space challenge in the city in a way that also, takes underutilized city properties and does more with them. So just understanding as we're kind of moving to this next phase of It's Okay to find a new space for them. Just hearing a little bit more about how the learnings from that can be applied or be part of the considerations for some of the other kind of requests that might be coming to the city around space, and especially in the context of the Culture Connects plan, which also identifies that as a priority.
Forgive me, are you asking like what we're looking at from the broader portfolio and broader arts and culture kind of?
No, what I'm asking is that we have repeatedly said that the model that has been used to provide this space for a cultural organization like It's Okay is one that we don't intend to be a one-off. It's one that we intend to learn from and to do more of as a city. So I'm trying to understand as we move from this phase of the time on Queen Street wrapping up and identifying new space for It's Okay, how are we taking the lessons from that and ensuring that other cultural organizations and city spaces can benefit from the example that has been set here?
Sure. Do you want to go ahead first? Yeah.
We can't hear you, Mike.
It's not working? Okay, I'll try this.
Not really.
How's this? This is working. Yeah, I can tell this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Deceived by the red light again. Yeah, we have council direction, I believe it goes back to 2020, to identify city-owned space which is suitable for below market rate lease to grassroots cultural organizations. It's Okay, so far as you point out, is the one and only instance of our having done that. I believe that it will be useful for us as It's Okay wraps up its tenancy at 468 Queen West to get from them, Jacqueline, this is something I think we can do, a kind of a top-level report on the impact, the cultural impact, the social impact, the artistic impact that their operations there have had over the course of 3 years, so that we have that for discussions around 16 Ossington to assure the community of what kind of thing is being considered there. Like you and I were saying, that it's not a nightclub moving into the neighborhood, etc. One thing, Scott, you may or may not be aware of, we now have from corporate real estate management, we being the Night Economy Internal Working Group, a list, a master list of city-owned properties, which was provided by CREM. I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but it seems germane here. And it's a massive list. It's got all kinds of different city properties on it. all kinds of descriptions. You've probably seen that kind of thing. We just saw it last month, and I think what we're going to do moving forward with our colleagues in CREM and with Create.to is parse through that list and really filter it so that we're getting to the heart of maybe there are, you know, in the dozens or maybe even fewer than that, buildings that are in suitable condition, suitable location, right kind of description, state of good repair, that would be the right kinds of things for consideration of replicating that template that we did with It's Okay. So that's work that's going to be starting immediately with our partner divisions so that we have data and information of where else we can do this, in addition to downtown as well. There may be opportunities outside the downtown core.
Great. Anyone else, committee, with some questions? Mayor.
Thank you. My question is, if things work out with 16 Ossington, will this be a permanent home for It's Okay, or will there still be a time limit on when they can occupy the space till?
Through the chair, I think we're seeking a long-term tenancy here. So, you know, we'd certainly be in discussions with them about that if this develops into a real opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. We'll go over to Johnny.
Yeah, this is a exciting potential location at 16 Ossington. Two questions. Would this be similar to, following up on Umair's question, would this similarly be a below market lease for It's Okay? And is the space physically accessible the way that the space at 468 Queen has been?
The intent would be to, through the chair, the intent would be to pursue a below market rate here. The specifics of that I wouldn't get into at this point, but certainly that's part of the discussions we'll be having with It's Okay if they're interested in this site. As far as accessibility, the site had been previously used for health and mental health purposes and is accessible at least at the ground floor. We'd be looking through the BCA at any other kind of improvements that might need to be made to that to accommodate greater accessibility at the property.
Just to add to that, Johnny, as Scott mentioned earlier, this discussion right now is still a little bit in the preliminary stage because this building condition assessment from 2015 identified a number of different things that needed to be done. We don't know what has or hasn't been done. So we've commissioned an updated assessment, and it may, you know, depending on what is found, I think the feasibility and the suitability and the appropriateness of these conversations will be more focused. We hope to have more information on that early in the new year.
Thank you.
Thanks, Johnny. Any other questions? I'm looking in the room. I'm looking online. Oh, hi, Lisa. Questions over to you.
I'm just wondering if there's any specs that you would like to share, having spent the better part of the year feeling like a real estate broker myself, in terms of if this building is seen as too small. Is there some specifics you want to share? Because I have seen over 100 properties, without exaggeration, in the last 6 months. And maybe something would work.
Through the chair, I think any information we can get on the requirements from It's Okay for their needs would be welcome to look at the rest of the portfolio. As Mike said earlier, we're working quite actively in CREM, multiple units in CREM with EDC on the range of opportunities that exist within the city's portfolio. This property was a emergent opportunity and I think a low-hanging fruit, so we wanted to make sure we took advantage of that. But if it doesn't work, certainly we'd want to collect the requirements to see if any other places would work. And I think if there's opportunities that members are aware of, I'm sure Mike would want to hear about that as well.
Yeah, and Lisa, just with respect to specs, I'm not sure if you caught it, but when Scott spoke first, he mentioned, I think, around 5,800 square feet in this building. The current It's Okay space is around 10,000 square feet spread across main floor, second floor, and basement. So this one's substantially smaller, but, you know, we don't want to rule anything out, and I don't think It's Okay does either. There may be ways in which they can adapt their operations and look at fitting what they're doing into a smaller space. So again, we'll know more once the building condition assessment comes back.
They're looking for something with multiple rooms or an open space? Because I just saw something recently that would definitely be closer to 10,000. Happy to share anyway if anyone's interested, or if this existing space doesn't prove to work out because of its size.
I'm seeing a sideline for you, Lisa.
Yeah.
They're looking for something, my understanding is they're looking for something that has one main area that can be used for performances with a stage, maybe 200 cap room, you know, few thousand square feet, and then other rooms that can be used for the types of things that they do now: rehearsal, mentorship, recording, graphic design, theater operations, library, gallery, that kind of stuff. So yes and yes.
And how long a lease?
TBC, but I think, as you know, I think if you've got a longer lease, you know, 5 years plus, you can really start planning and looking at sustainability and growth and growing your community and looking ahead at the long-term trajectory of the organization. So ideally, I think we'd be looking at something that is not another 2-year lease.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Any other questions? Just pulling out here. Hi, Ben. Over to you.
Hi, everybody. This sounds absolutely terrific. Very excited to hear the news. I also wanted to make a suggestion that I noticed there's an adjacency. I looked it up on Street View. There's an adjacency of a Green Pea parking lot. So as part of the assessment for It's Okay, it may be worthwhile to look at utilization of that adjacency to see if, you know, maybe there could be some summer uses or exterior uses for cultural events utilizing that parking lot as part of the square footage on, you know, on an as-need basis. The other suggestion I wanted to recommend is, in addition to the in addition to the building assessment report, maybe look at any heritage and preservation requirements, because it does look like a pretty antique building, and there may be some implications related to that.
Good point. Okay. You want to speak to that? No. Okay. All right. That's been noted. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Not seeing any. I think we'll jump into speakers, and I know Councillor Malik has some commentary and a motion.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I do just have a motion. It's pretty straightforward, and thanks to Mike for working on this together. Just to be able to say that we're looking for a report back on the status in Q1 whenever information is available. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So that'll come back to our committee in Q1 once we have a little bit more information, which I think will be great. Any other speakers?
Thank you to everyone for the incredible work on this, and I'm glad it's echoed by the committee as well, and really appreciate it.
No, it's really important. And to your point in the questions of staff earlier, this is something that we want to build on and then have a model that we can replicate, you know, more broadly. So it's great. Any other comments on this? Okay, not seeing any, then we will move the motion by Councillor Malik. All in favor? Okay, that carries. Great, thank you. And are we receiving anything, or is just a motion?
You look there, not me.
motion to amend then. All right, motion to amend. All in favor? Okay, great, that carries. All right, thanks very much, and thanks guys for being here with us on that. We will jump back into our agenda order, and that puts us to item MA 5.1. Oh, do we want to do MLS? Get you in and out? All right, so we'll reorder the agenda. We'll jump to 2. And then we'll do the task teams after, I promise. For folks online, we have our friends from MLS in the room here. This is MA 5.2, which is noise monitoring for events. We've got staff from MLS and bylaw enforcement. They're going to present some of the changes. Oh. Never seen that before. Broadcast Toronto? I don't know if we're on the stream anymore or not, but oh, we are. Okay. For folks online, we're just
Mr. Chair, John Carew here. We're getting some echoes, or at least I am.
We are. Thanks, John. We're aware.
Should we start a beat going?
I think so. We got a good dub going.
Anyone beatbox?
I feel like we have all the ingredients. We're just there.
A lot of talent on this committee. So we may have resolved the echo, and we're looking at a blank screen here. I don't know what folks online are seeing, but these are those hybrid nuances, challenges. So we'll just give it a second here to see if we can get the committee members from WebEx back up on our screen. I apologize. I don't know what you're looking at. Oh, now we got a slideshow. So that's pretty good. So then we'll just carry on and assume the technical issues are resolved. I believe we have Leo Butko, who is the district manager, and Anna Fernandez. Is Anna here as well? Yeah. Okay. And we're just getting a slideshow queued up here. I think Leo's getting plugged in there. And TMAC will know this has been something that's been in front of us before and taken away and different updates. And I think there's a lot of us, I've heard from you folks over the past number of months, we're interested in some of the changes and the requirements to process and fees associated with monitoring and staffing and all that sort of stuff. So I think we're going to get some line of sight into that from Leo here. And if you're all ready to go, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity for this presentation. I hope there isn't much echo here. On September 1st of this year, there were changes to the exemption permit process of the noise bylaw. And what the purpose of this presentation is to give everyone an understanding of what the changes are, and also to include how we make some internal decisions in regards to monitoring and costs and things along that line. So first thing you will probably note is when you go online to apply for the your exemption permit, you'll notice it's changed. The previous exemption permit was all the different types of exemptions were on one PDF. Now everything is separate in 3 PDFs, so you'll be looking at just going to the amplified section. We've added a number of extra questions in the amplified section, and part of those questions will allow us to have some determinations in regards to screening. We have 3 different levels of noise exemptions for amplified sounds, and these are some of the some of the factors that we take into consideration. This information is available on the website, so you'll be able to see, how we make our determinations. So we look at the number of people in the audience. Is there less than, 5, 10 people, more than 100? That's one determination we look at. Is it a single amplifier? Are there multiple amplifiers? Very importantly, are there any subwoofers, which appear to be one of the major causes of complaints we get, the low frequency sounds from these events. And also, what type of event is it? Is it like a music event where the music is part of the background, yet there's people conversing, or is it an event where we have a large concert and the whole concept of the music event is for music? So we look at those parameters through the screening, and then we come up with a determination whether it's a level 1, level 2, or level 3. Level 1, that's our low impact activity, which is $110. That would be like movies in the park, someone having a wedding in the backyard. That's where it'll be captured. Our level 2 impacts would be, that's for $340. And on those ones, it would be like a festival where there is some background music, but the whole concept isn't for the music. It's a background. It isn't the main focus. While the level 3 would be your major concerts, or where sometimes we even have 2 or 3 separate events, in one venue, and a lot of acoustic sound, and that's $570. Now, for level 1 and level 2 counselors, they still have 14 days to respond. Otherwise, we're compelled to approve those applications. Now, if it's a level 3, those stay open until the counselor makes a decision one way or other. So there are no time limitations on level 3 applications. Also, changes to the bylaw include if the applications aren't received within 21 days of the start of the event, there's an $85 late fee applied. Now, within our bylaw previously, City of Toronto divisions, agencies, boards, and commissions, they were all exempt from applications and monitoring fees. Now, the new bylaw, what we included was that registered charities and not-for-profits, they're exempt from the application fees. They're not exempt from the monitoring, but from the application fees. And essentially, when we've been receiving this information, and we expect the applicants to self-identify whether they're registered charities or not. We sometimes can look at provincial and federal registration records to determine that, or if we're not 100% sure, we may go back to the applicant if they could provide us with a little bit more information to determine whether they're not-for-profit or a registered charity. Now, this is the question, is when do we have noise monitoring? That's the basic one. And there are times when counselors, they say, I won't approve this application unless there's some monitoring being involved. And sometimes the counselors just want, a couple hours here and there. And sometimes we've had a case where counselors want the total event monitored by staff. So that's one of the purposes. Also, if there's ongoing complaints or investigations at a particular location when there are music events, or possibly an organizer who has a history of non-complying with some of our exemption permits. I'm sorry. Also, we look at the times and dates of the event. If we have an event that's finishing on, let's say, Saturday at 6 p.m., it's not likely that we're going to be, too concerned about monitoring. We may require self-monitoring, which I'll get to a little bit later. But if it's an event that runs 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night near some sensitive locations, we're going to want to, and we've had possible complaints in the past, we're going to want to have that monitored at least for the last 3-4 hours of the event. We do note that, during events, that sound levels increase as it gets later at night. Now, also, we look at if there's some noise-sensitive locations. If you're near residential properties, we may also suggest that there would be monitoring complied. And also, history. If we have a history of applicants that have been warned and continually exceed the parameters, and in those days it was 85 dBA at 20 meters, we may want to be there monitoring as part of our responsibility while monitoring is we have contact with 311. So if any complaints come from the general public, 311 contacts the supervisor on duty, lets them know so that we have an ongoing record at that time that there's an issue. Maybe we'll send our officers out to that location, take some measurements, things along that line. So those are some of the rationale we use, whether there's monitoring or not. Now, the staffing requirements. If it's a level 1, it's not likely we're going to have any need for monitoring. But level 2 or 3, if it's like a street festival or an event with multiple locations, amplified sound, where some noise is emitted, we may have, and this is at a minimum, 1 supervisor and 2 officers. Now, depending on the number of locations and the distance in those locations and the difficulty where it may be for our officers to move from location to location, we may ask for more officers at that scene. But we will be having discussions, with the applicants, and also depending on the counselors themselves, because the counselors may also be interested in ensuring that the areas are properly monitored. Now, for concerts or smaller events where there's a single location of amplified instrument, we may only have 1 supervisor and 1 officer available. And then small concerts or non-music focused events, we'll have 2 officers. And the reason why we have 2 officers is that after 7 p.m., we're compelled, by our procedures that we have to have 2 officers working in tandem. So it's not because we like to increase the cost to the applicants. It's a health and safety consideration that we have to take into matters. And in regards to the minimum of 2 officers, we'll always have a supervisor who would be on duty at a different location. So if there are issues or health and safety concerns, the supervisors would be able to deal with it. So we look at the event, we look at the history in order to determine how many officers and, of course, the hours available in order to have the event. Now, the fees have increased as of September, and for the supervisor, it's $103 per hour, and for officers, it's $93 per hour. Now, for the last year or so, we've also included self-monitoring, and what that is we have discussions with the applicants and we send them a form for them to self-monitor with the equipment they have. Many times when we read the applications, the applicants state that their audio techs have proper equipment in order to monitor the sound levels. Well, we're asking then, okay, if you do that, please record them, document it. We'll look at the results on that documentation, see if there have been any complaints, see if it makes sense, and then if there's no issues, there was no cost to the applicants. So we found the self-monitoring actually very, very useful for those circumstances where we're not 100% sure whether we should be compelling our officers to go out monitoring or not. Now, if there have been no issues, then the next year, and there was self-monitoring, we'll probably do it again. So that's the concept that we've used. And of course, right now, in respect of self-monitoring, because, well, I'll get to this on the next slide, is there have been changes to how the measurements are being conducted. Previously, it was 85 dBA at 20 meters from the source. There was always some arguments as when you have multiple speakers, multiple locations, well, where's the source and where's the 20 meters from there? Well, we try to come up with something that's reasonable. But now, for health and safety purposes for our officers, I really wasn't crazy about our officers being embedded within a crowd, trying to take measurements 20 meters from this huge speaker, because I worry, for the health and safety being in the crowd. Also, all that extra crowd noise, like how accurate are we getting our numbers? So we decided that we'll take measurements at the lot line or property line and use 85 dBA as a standard. Well, we've also included this DBC, 105 DBC. The rationale for that is I would suggest that about 90 to 95% of all our complaints that we get from these festivals are complaints about low frequency noise. And that is basically from the subwoofers and the low frequency sounds that travel long distances, and they're also very, very difficult to mitigate. So now we have 85 dBA or 105 dBC at the property line, and our officers will be in a safer location. And part of the application, we also require, site plans to get an idea on where the event is, where the speaker placements are, as well as the perimeter, where the property lines are, and then we could look at a map, see the nearest residences, and determine where's the best place to take measurements. And for construction, nothing's really changed. Also, the supervisor on duty, or I may also compel it, when I see some of these applications, is to take some measurements at different locations rather than at property line. And for those purposes will be for data gathering, because this is a change. 20 meters from the source to property line. There could be some cases where it's really in our benefit, but I always worry that there could be some cases where it could be problematic. So I want to be able to take other measurements in order to collect data to see if there's any need for future changes, or where I can suggest it. And I think that's essentially the end of my presentation. Any questions?
Thanks very much. Any questions for Leo? Looking in the room, if I can get the WebEx up, I'll see the... Okay, a couple questions. So we'll start with Omer, and then we'll go over to Ben.
Thank you. Thank you, Leo, for the presentation. I do have a few questions, so I'll just go one by one. The first question is around the timing. So how much time after applying a noise permit exemption will the applicant be notified or informed of any potential changes that need to be made?
One thing I wanted to do this year, and I know we had issues last year, is I'm trying to expedite. The sooner we get the application in, the sooner we'll be able to do some analysis. And we have to remember, it has to go through the counselor first. The counselor has the time to make the recommendation, and if it's a level 3, they can be there forever. But by the same token, counselors' offices also contact ourselves. And they ask for our opinions in regards to, what our considerations are, and we'll work with them. So I think number one, and I understand that what you have to worry about is budgeting, right? If it's going to be monitoring, your concern is, well, how much is it going to cost me? And the faster you know, the better it's going to be. And I've taken that lesson. And I am looking at if we give you a ballpark, and if there's going to be any major changes, then we'll let you know as soon as possible.
Thank you. I think that, yeah, that was my follow-up question here. I see that your slide already says that the city, the councillor's office needs at least 14 days, but the 21-day mark is for the late fee. So is it safe to say that a minimum, 30 days or a month in advance of the event would be like a good timeline to submit the application?
Yes, I would suggest that would be a good time.
Okay, thank you. Referencing to the fee, so thank you for mentioning that the criteria of the fee and the waivers. In terms of the noise monitoring staffing fee, so the supervisors, the officers, is there room for exemption for nonprofits there?
The exemption for nonprofit is only for the application fee, but not for the monitoring.
Okay. I have one more question. How do you determine which events to monitor if they're all happening on the same weekend, for example?
We've had those challenges. First off, in regards to the monitoring fees, it's cost recovery. It's not, we're not making a profit, on this matter. I just want to make that clear. Yeah, we've had many instances. We've had 3 or 4 different events on the same day, and it's a challenge for our officers. We have limited staff availability. We only use officers who are off duty at that time. And we also can consider if there's no available officers, and if one of the events may be, shall we say, on that gray line, we may request then self-monitoring in order to handle those overruns. Now, what I would like to actually say here, which is probably a good idea, is if we do request self-monitoring, make sure you contact Noise TO so that you can understand what the best the type of equipment in order to self-monitor. Previously, everyone was using their Apples and they were getting, dBA measurements. But what you need to be able to do is have a meter that can measure both A-weighted and C-weighted, and it's called an integrating sound level meter. That way, it can over that 10-minute span when you're measuring, you'll come up with one particular number.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, can I ask one more question?
Yeah, of course. Yep.
Thank you. This is regarding the criteria, the scoring criteria, which determines which level the event is. I appreciate that, you've got a lot of detail there, but the concern is any music festival, specifically, which is the summer, which is the busy season for music festivals, just the way the scoring is laid out, they will always be level 3. If they have more than 100 people, and a decent music festival, outdoor festival, would almost always have more than 100 people. So by default, music festivals are all in level 3 anyway, which is a concern. The fees are one issue, the application fees, but also it just seems like level 3 would mean that they would have, again, that extremely high level of scrutiny, which is what brought us to this discussion in the committee the previous time we were all talking. And one of the issues which we had at our festival and some other partner festivals was just the way the bylaw officers were addressing our staff. There was a level of aggression, a level of confrontation. And we have to remember, yes, the music festivals will have multiple speakers and will have all of this, but they're still, it doesn't mean that they're crime sites, and it doesn't mean that they get treated with such scrutiny. So the question really is, specifically for music festivals, the scoring system does not seem very favorable. Are there any exemptions, or space for adjustments in the future to the criteria of the 3 levels that you have laid out here?
Difficult for me to answer that, right at this stage, because in regards to a festival, there's so many variables that. Let's look at it this way. I mean, my concept here is if we can work together and be flexible as possible, because all we want to do is ensure that you're in compliance with the legislation. That's all we need to be able to ensure. And hopefully the changes that were made will do that. Secondly, I know you mentioned our officers. Well, one reason why I was glad that we moved away from the 20 meters from the source is we're away from people, and you really don't know, how whenever our officers are saying low down the sound levels, and you have the crowd all around them saying, "What are you doing?" You're placing yourself in a situation where it's difficult. So our officers away in a safer location, less bothersome. I believe we'll have less of those sort of, shall we say, struggles.
No, we appreciate them, and the changes are very welcome, Leo. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Amir. We'll flip over to Ben.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Bradford, and thank you, Leo, for the presentation. Great job, and your commitment to public safety and the health and safety of your staff really shone through in that presentation. I do have a couple of questions and comments. The first one is about the number of people. It's quite a large range in the different tiers that you have listed. And if I was filling out this application, I might wonder, is it 2,000 people at one moment in time, or is it 2,000 people throughout the duration of the event, which is something that I might struggle with? So I was wondering if you could respond to that question.
We would probably, if we're looking at 2,000 people over 24 hours and let's say 100, 150 people, I mean, on the application, point that out, essentially, so that we can make a determination as to the rationality for that, which will bring it down to a lower level.
So if we have sort of a 2 or 3 day festival that's happening and we're expecting to have 2,000 people over, the course of a period of time, we would identify that in the application.
Yeah. Because the more information we have, the better it is to make evaluations. And we prefer making honest evaluations. And if you're unhappy, if you say, well, why am I level 3? I should be a level 2. You can always pick up a phone or send me an email.
A couple of other things as I go through my list. I just sort of make note that probably the number of days that you have listed would be calendar days. So it would be probably helpful for applicants to know if they're business days or calendar days. The 3 separate PDFs, are they potentially like merged together, or would someone have to go onto the website and find these 3 different PDFs and then put them together and then apply for them? I'm just trying to think of like the ease of the application.
They're all listed. As soon as you go into the exemption permit location on the website, it'll have your choices: amplified sound, and music instruments, construction, concrete pouring.
Oh, I see. So they're separate. We don't have to fill out all 3. There's 3 separate categories and 3 separate.
No, okay. And that's why I wanted the changes, because it was more confusing in the past. And in 2025, we're working on developing online applications to hopefully even simplify the matter more.
That's terrific. The next question is about the billable rates. I understand this is terrific that non-for-profits and charities are exempt from the application fees. And perhaps there could be some other considerations for maybe some grassroots type events. But I did notice that the monitoring fees of the supervisor and the officers are roughly at around $100 an hour. Now, are those overtime rates? Is that someone who's like worked their 35 to 40 hours during the day, and now they're working overtime to attend these events?
Yeah, those are the overtime rates.
Okay. And is there a way, I'm just trying to think of affordability, especially for nonprofits, for charities, and also for grassroots. Is there a way to look at avoiding this sort of trigger for overtime and maybe, I'm just spitballing here, but maybe find out if the organization could have a volunteer operates the device that the officer would as a way of offsetting the cost? Because I just did some rough calculations, like an 8-hour event could cost anywhere between, $1,800 to $2,800 after tax for these groups. And that may actually be somewhat unaffordable for them.
As I mentioned previously, we won't be amending the monitoring. We won't be amending for cost purposes. What we'll look at is if we have an event, we'll probably, the minimum is I would probably say is 4 hours. And that's because it's overtime, right? We won't be there for the full 8 or 12 hours for the event. We're going to be there from a good time period up to the end and after. Because there's always the possibility that they may continue playing beyond what the application or the permit, what provided allowed them to. We have had times when we've had a hybrid situation where we've done self-monitoring up front and our monitoring later on. So it'll be based on a case-by-case basis, and it's difficult to ascertain or say here it's going to be a black and white. No, there's too many variables.
Yeah, I totally understand. Just wanted to plant the seed because it did look like overtime rates. And again, we want to make these especially for the non-for-profits and the charities, we want to make this accessible to them. So maybe something to consider and look at there to make it more affordable for them. The last comment that I'd identify here is the property line and the lot line. I think that's a terrific idea. One of the things I'd recommend during the application process is to actually identify what those property lines and lot lines are, because it might be difficult to ascertain that when you're physically there and mobilized. Like those lines are not always drawn out on the ground. So if that could be identified ahead of schedule, I think that would be beneficial to everybody involved.
You're absolutely right, and that was a challenge I totally agree with. That's why we included the site plan, and then we'll be able to look at the site plan, be Google Map or through our own internal Toronto iView, and determine where the property line is as compared to where the best locations are for monitoring.
Thank you, Leo. That concludes my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Ben. I think I saw Johnny with a hand up online. Johnny, we'll go over to you, and then Tracy.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation, Leo. Yeah, I want to echo what I've heard from Umair and Benjamin so far. I do appreciate the commitment to health and safety, but also I'm concerned about the additional scrutiny and administrative burden that's going to be placed on event organizers in Toronto under these new rules. I have a couple of comments and questions. The first is what triggers this whole process? If anyone, for example, applies for a park permit in Toronto for a special event, including amplified music, will they be directed to apply for a noise exemption permit at that stage?
My understanding is in order to obtain a parks permit, and if you're going to be having an amplified event, for that permit, that the requirement is to obtain a noise exemption permit.
And if someone doesn't apply for a noise exemption permit, will monitoring still take place and be charged to that producer?
That's case by case. I mean, if someone's, it's same as having movies in the park. They're going to have to obtain a permit. This is a requirement by the Parks Department, not ourselves. Right. The likelihood of them being in exceedance of the bylaw is between 0 and 0, and having them pay for officers to stand out there is senseless. But there may be an event where there could be a huge music event in a park that there have been possibly previous complaints from the public, in those cases, we may be compelling to have monitoring conducted.
And what about events on private property? Will event organizers be informed of the need to apply for permits if they're not going through city permitting?
Most of our, I would hope they would be aware. You have to, maybe just go back quickly here. In the city of Toronto, under the noise bylaw, you're allowed to make music 24/7. You can play music 24/7. You just cannot exceed certain sound level limits, both A and C, within 2 time parameters, 11 p.m. being the time parameter. What the permit allows you is to exceed those levels without the concern of being charged. So if you're holding a private event and you want to not get a permit and you want to risk being in contravention of the bylaw and the possible subsequent enforcement action after, then those are the choices you make.
Oh, I understand that. Thanks for explaining that. I'm just wondering what are considered recent noise complaints for either producers or locations. Is there a time frame for what's recent?
I would have to look at location and look at when there was any previous, where that particular event was held at that location and any complaints at that time, be it previous year, 2 years ago. Basically, the freshest information is always the best. Like if we go back 5 years, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. And is the event producer sort of informed of these past noise compliance issues at any point in the process?
The applicants may, during discussions, and they may ask, why are you including monitoring? We will have some discussions and say there were complaints, but also you have to be mindful, just because someone complains doesn't mean that they may have been in contravention, right? So these are allegations. So we have to balance that out also. If there's just one complainant, and no one else in the community complains, we would look at things, possibly differently.
And following up on Emer's point about the criteria level on slide 1, I'm just wondering, I might want to maybe clarify something. The question, what type of equipment or amplification will be used? It says single amplifier speakers or multiple amplifier speakers. Do you mean like a single stage and multiple stages? Because every stage is going to have multiple speakers. So I'm just wondering if is that the distinction that you're putting across, multiple locations that are emitting sound or multiple stages?
Well, part of the application also includes the type of equipment that is being placed in there. So we'll be able to identify and determine, if it's a single amplifier. We get applications where someone is just using a Bluetooth speaker, and we get applications when there's, multiple speaker setups possibly with subwoofers or even array systems. So that information will be in there, and we'll be able to tell if it's a simple circumstance or something that's a little bit more complex.
Right. Okay. And I think my last question is, I think Ben alluded to this. Would there be the consideration of creating a category for grassroots organizers that might not have non-for-profit or charitable status?
That's a discussion that I think is beyond my capability of answering at this stage.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Leo. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Johnny. Tracy, did I see your hand up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks again for the presentation. I just wanted to ask if an operator, at an event, a measurement does exceed the allowed levels, what would the process be for letting the operator know so that they could adjust those levels?
Okay.
I'm thinking about especially if the measurement is being taken from the property line, how will that communication take place? Because I'm imagining that most operators would want to be compliant and remain within the allowed levels, but that it could also get complicated, especially at street festivals where the property line, there's a lot of variation in where the property line is. So the information gathered by the monitoring officer could be very helpful for the operator who might need to just signal to the sound engineers to bring it down a little bit. So I just want to make sure that the operators would have the opportunity to make adjustments if they're informed that they've exceeded them. And I also wondered whether if that adjustment is made immediately and good faith is shown in trying to stay within the limits, that won't count against the operator for the future.
I appreciate your question, and it's a great one. Our process is make sure we have contact. On the forms, we have contacts with the applicant so that we know who to have some discussions with. Many times the applicants say, okay, here are the audio texts, and so there's already the communication has initiated. Our first step is when we take a measurement and if they're found to be in non-compliance, let's say it's above, we contact either the sound tech or the person responsible and say, lower it down. They lower it down, we take another measurement, we're happy. If it stays there, we're happy, but sometimes they gradually increase as 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock occurs, and our officers, I don't want to use the word frustrated, but, and I understand the circumstances because the more you're exposed to loud noise, the more you don't hear the loud noise. So it's like many times you're driving on the highway, listening to music's really loud, you hop in the car first thing in the morning and bam, the music's really loud. That's because your eardrums and everything else has lowered that threshold and it doesn't sound as loud last night as it is this morning. So I understand the circumstances there, but we have to ensure that they're in compliance with the bylaw. We may give a warning, we may issue what we call essentially a letter of non-compliance to the operator. That would be problematic because the next year that they apply, we would have noted that we do our best to have cooperation, but if we don't get cooperation, we have no alternative but to take reasonable enforcement action. We will not turn off the systems or anything along that line. Those are the struggles we have because everyone's there to have a good time. We understand that. But by the same token, neighbors down the street, they got their stopwatches and they're waiting for 11 o'clock, and if it doesn't stop at 11, we'll get a call. It ran to 11:05. What's going on?
Great. Okay. Thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure that the understanding was that we're working together to try to address things in real time at events.
Okay. Thanks, Tracy. Looking online, Umair back for another round.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for bringing this up, Tracy. And I just have a question. In the spirit of working together, I know, Leo, what you explained, there will be a warning and a letter. I'm just wondering if there is an appeal process and if you can shed light on that.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the last words?
Is there a appeal process? So if...
appeals process.
Yeah, yeah.
If it gets to a point where we issue a ticket, the appeals process would be the courts. But short of that, I don't want to go down there. I don't think that's good for anyone. But we also have a responsibility and a duty. I mean, if someone asks, they were in non-compliance for the last 2 hours and they didn't do anything. Also, I guess if the permit itself isn't, shall we say, approved, then you can go through community council. That's another route, on that. But in regards to our monitoring, I think the best appeal process is to maintain communications, with ourselves, Noise TO.
Yeah, I think that's where we're getting it. Like going to the courts is really the last thing, and I hope we don't get to that. But generally, I'm also wondering, and this is back to the committee and the chair, if there is a role that TMAC or the music office can play to facilitate and improve the relationships between Noise TO, the bylaw officers, the presenters, and the festivals, because we do want it to be a good experience both ways. And if there is a channel of communication that can come through either TMAC or the music office, that would really help build a strong relationship both ways.
I'm open to maintaining whatever communications is necessary. I mean, I'm interested in compliance. I want people to go out, have fun, and just stay within the limitations of the bylaw. And they're pretty good, I think, now. I think they're probably capable of being maybe a little louder than they were pre-September 1st, but we'll soon see.
Thank you. I do have one last question, which is not for Leo. I would post it to the committee, to the chair and the music office team, so Mike and Jacqueline. But just the point that Ben brought up regarding the fees, while we appreciate there are some exemptions for nonprofits, the grassroots organizations are also a concern in our community. Not every grassroots organization has a nonprofit status. And the fees while it seems necessary, they can be a big hurdle to event producers and promoters, and again, especially the grassroots one. So is there something that we could do as a committee for future discussion to talk about supporting or exploring an avenue of exemptions for smaller nonprofit grassroots organizations? Not just for the application fee, but also the noise monitoring fee. Because again, as Ben said, like this could be thousands of dollars, which become a huge burden on non-commercial music activities and festivals.
Good point. Did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sorry. Hi. My name is Mitch Thibault. I'm a policy and planning advisor with MLS. And through the chair, just to confirm, so City Council last week actually approved an amendment to the bylaw to waive the application fee for grassroots cultural organizations. So that's now in effect, and we're just amending some of our operational procedures and communications on that. So the application fee is now waived for grassroots cultural organizations as well as not-for-profits. But again, the monitoring fees would still apply.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this update. I think then I would just mention the monitoring fee, and if there is a way we can push and request a process for exemptions for those in the future as well, with the focus on nonprofits and grassroots organizations as a priority group.
Thanks for that, Umair. Any other questions? Look into the room. Johnny.
Yes, just to pick up on what Umair is suggesting and what Benjamin was mentioning about the cost of monitoring, related to my question earlier about non-compliance. obviously we want to support compliance with this and understand the need for a noise exemption permit and a noise exemption permit. But I do ask, what are the actual fines for non-compliance? And is there a risk of this system making it actually more affordable for people to not pay for the permit because the cost of if the cost of application fee and the cost of monitoring is actually going to be higher than the cost of a fine?
Good question.
I believe for a Part 1 ticket, if you're ticketed, I think it's around $750. If we decide to go by summons, which is a Part 3, the maximum fine's $100,000.
Okay, so shooting for Part 1. Looking online, any other questions? Oh, Johnny, did you have more? Okay.
Saying thank you, Leo.
Got it. If I could get a couple folks just to turn on cameras, if you're able to do so, clerks want a little quorum. There we go. Great, thanks. Any questions in the room? Okay, so if I could just ask very quickly, somebody, I don't know if it was Umair or Johnny or Ben or Tracy, but in your original matrix of evaluation, I wanted to clarify the speakers, plural, versus amp, plural, amps, I think we're talking about amps. How many events would actually just have one speaker or amp that comes in for a noise bylaw exemption? How likely does that ever happen?
We do, for parks, we get that a lot.
One amp, one speaker.
Yeah. And because they're compelled to. We also have the same for people having weddings in the back or anniversaries in the back. That would be the DJ setup. We consider that the same.
Mono, not stereo sound. Okay, so, and then it also assumes that in those private settings that they know to come to you to get this noise exemption permit. We talked about parks, it's automatically triggered through the application of a park permit, but I'm now having a private property wedding backyard, I come in for this permit. And I think you said, hopefully people know.
Okay, maybe going back to I think what you're trying to say is someone who should be in level 1 because they have an extra speaker or more amplifiers, a level 2.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's an interesting sort of screen and trigger.
Yeah.
I would intuitively think most people are broadcasting in stereo sound, but that might be wrong. So it does seem like an escalating clause in the matrix there that bumps it up.
I get that, and we can make amendments to that. I mean, I understand where you're coming from, and you're applying common sense here, and I hope our people aren't just, shall we say,
letter of the law about it.
They're thinking through it. They're not just ticking boxes and pushing it what it shouldn't be. And I believe we have delegated authority to make those criteria changes.
Okay. All right, that's good. I'm seeing some head nodding. So we'll actually, I'm going to have a motion here to some of the Umair's comments and Johnny's having you come back before festival season with some updates on how this is sort of evolving with some of that delegated authority. We'll have you come back in May. I'll move that in a second. But two more quick follow-ups. The self-monitoring is interesting because we require people to self-monitor, but that's all retroactive. It's sort of like after the fact. So in terms of residents or folks who might be having an issue or a promoter or someone doing the event, it's another thing for them to do. But if there is an issue, it's not resolving an issue there. It's sort of a for next time. So is it fair to say the self-monitoring is really, it's about the next hypothetical event that you might have because it obviously doesn't do anything in the moment?
Yes, that would be the ultimate.
And then what happens with the review? Like, do you actually spend the time and the resources to go and review every self-monitoring report, or do you only review if the person applies for a subsequent permit
We
the
would,
future.
our review would be based on if there's been any complaints or not. I mean,
Got it.
That's, and then we would look at the numbers. We also recognize, you know, what's their efficiency in regarding to, and the equipment in regards to providing the data to us, and what's their honesty in providing the data to us. I mean, everything could be 84 dBA, 104 dBc, you know, throughout. And we'd look at that and we say, now that's, they're fudging the numbers.
Is there ever any, I don't know what the word would be, but like sort of auditing process of we're relying on self-monitoring. And that's, you know, I think that's a nice compromise of managing fees and burden for promoters and applicants. Is there, but if we're talking about our new property line measurement versus 20 meters from source of sound, do we ever go out and actually sort of audit to see if self-monitoring is being done in the way you anticipate it?
I would not say that we've done that, but I know there are, actually, I think we do have the capability of having officers who are on duty at that time, dealing with their ongoing complaints from the general public. We can ask them to go down and take a couple quick measurements to validate whether those numbers are being correct.
Okay. Understood. And then I guess the last question for me would be, there are a bunch of sort of triggers there. Level 1, level 2, level 3, counselors can engage on 1 and 2. They must engage on level 3. I might not be using the right language, but it was sort of a triage system there.
Yeah.
How often, this is obviously not something I'm doing very often, but how often are counselor offices actually doing this?
Okay. In respect of level 1 and 2, that the time period, where counselors, I think, they're aware that the application's the permit's it's going to be approved. They have to be aware of that, so they really shouldn't be ignoring it. But what sometimes has occurred with the volume of work that counselors' offices get, sometimes those applications may get lost in their inbox. The person who's responsible may have gone on vacation, because we've had that occur. And so if for a level 3, we want to make sure that if those matters do occur, that they haven't missed that 14-day time period.
Right. And then there was also what I would call like a counselor flex, the flex option of saying we want you to have noise monitoring on site. We want you to do self-monitoring. The counselor office flexing that option to you. How often does that happen?
That does happen here and there. I wouldn't say a lot, but it does happen. And I think how you have to look at it is it's not the counselors telling us what they want. It's the counselor saying, I will not approve this permit unless these conditions are met.
Do you think most counselor offices are aware of that sort of optionality?
The ones I've spoken to, yes.
Well, yeah, if you're talking to them, of course, but okay. So not super prevalent necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Okay. We've got 3 counselors on the call here. We're not going to do a straw poll, but it's just, that's interesting. Okay, those are all my questions. Thanks for that. Last go around, any other questions in the room? Okay, any speakers to the item? All right, is that motion ready? Okay, thanks. And this is really just kind of moving this on behalf of the committee here because there was lots of pretty detailed discussion, and thanks for the questions and commentary, and Leo and the team for all your hard work. Motion, which we'll display on the screen for everyone's consideration, requesting MLS to come back, work with the music office to enhance the communication between event organizers requiring noise monitoring, and report back to the committee of Q2 2025 on any refinements from a policy perspective that you're tuning up for concert and festival season. And then 2, I can't remember who was making this point. I think it was Umair. MLS, as part of the budget process here, to explore reductions in noise monitoring fees charged to event organizers. Quick commentary on that. For number 1, I certainly think that this is a new process we're standing up here at the City of Toronto. We need to be iterative. We need to be responsive to feedback. And I can tell you, with Woodbine Park in particular, in my neck of the woods, I've just heard from a number of event organizers that were not aware of the new program changes. They were not aware of the fees associated with the monitoring. And I think we heard it from a couple folks there. It can be burdensome, even for a market-oriented festival, let alone, not-for-profit or grassroots. And so just that communication chain of what we're expecting people to do and that timeline in which they are being notified, the expectations are clear for the sort of music industry and the folks who are engaging in this. I think that's important. So as you reflect on that and stand this up over the next few months, if you could give us an update, and I think we're really fortunate to have great folks on TMAC here that can channel that back through their networks as well so we can get the word out. And then two, you start adding up all that OT and the hours that might be required, and I think Umair or somebody, Ben, was doing back of envelope math. It can be thousands of dollars to sort of do this. If you have a councillor office that is eager and keen to see this, I could see scenarios where the sort of costs and the burden associated with that gets put on these festivals, and all of a sudden they're not as viable as they once were. So is there an opportunity in the same way council has taken care of some of the fees for the applications for those not-for-profits? Would we also look, broadly speaking, at event organizers as a city that promotes and supports music as part of the budget process? Are we able to manage that fee? I think we probably want to focus on the grassroots and the not-for-profits, but we'll give you an opportunity to look at it broadly and what a suite of fee reductions for monitoring might look like as part of the budget process. That's it for me. Any questions on the motion? Any other speakers? Then I will move those motions on a show of hands. All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? That carries. Item as amended. All in favor? Okay, that carries. I know that was a long one, everyone. Thank you, though. And Leo and the team, thanks for coming in. It's important. I think you can tell these folks care about it. So thanks for coming down. And we'll see you back Q2 for some more discussion. We're going to jump to item, I guess it was 1. Item 1, but don't worry, we're not just getting started. We're actually on 3 of 4. And that is our task team update. I'll just pull my notes back up here so I can get back into that. No, very good. Mike with the plan here. So if we can get our TMAC task team updates, we've got some spokespeople on behalf of the teams to kind of walk us through. And I'll give you the rundown so everyone can be prepared. Everyone all good? Yep. We'll start with affordable housing. We've got Charlotte, we've got New Space, Johnny, Venues, Tracy, Advocacies and Partnership, Career Development, Tanisha, and Promotion and Tourism from Melissa. So that'll be the order and the sequence which we'll go through. We've got Charlotte in the room here, and we'll start on the affordable housing piece. And I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah. So I am on the Affordable Housing Task Team with Gila and Johnny, and what we've been doing is going on what we've called a listen and learn tour to find out more about who is working in the affordable housing for artists space in Toronto, what we can learn from them, what are some opportunities for collaboration between some of these entities, and we've gleaned some really useful and exciting info and are excited to connect some people together. So we met with seven different people. We met with the Housing Secretariat. We met with Unison Benevolent Fund, Kendra Fry at Creative Collisions, Donna Hamilton at Lakeshore Village Arts Co-op, Menon Dwarka at MPD Culture Consultants, and Hannah Fleischer from Community and Cultural Spaces Trust, and David Plant from Performing Arts Lodge. So the most exciting thing that we learned is that Performing Arts Lodge, which is a nonprofit that owns and operates Performing Arts Lodge, which is near the St. Lawrence Market and has 205 units and houses 243 artists. They have almost paid off their mortgage on an $85 million asset and are looking to leverage this asset to create more affordable housing for artists. So there are many different conversations that could happen between Performing Arts Lodge and some of the other people we've spoken to, including Community and Cultural Spaces Trust, who are operating in Ward 9 and have a trust of $2 million to put into cultural space in the ward. And they have been looking at different properties, but a lot of the properties they're looking at have a couple of apartments in them, and part of their mandate is that they are not allowed to operate housing, but there's an opportunity there for a collaboration between someone who is and CCST. So yeah, those are some of our updates, and yeah, just kind of learning more about the demand. Lakeshore Village Arts Co-op has such a long waiting list that they've closed their waiting list, and Performing Arts Lodge has a waiting list of 6 to 8 years and 350 people. So there are definitely a lot of people out there waiting for housing, but yeah, a lot of exciting opportunities to maybe help make some things happen. And yeah, we still have more people to meet with and some more connections to make. So yeah, that's kind of our update.
Thanks, Charlotte. Sobering numbers. Any questions for Charlotte or the team? Commentary on the housing file? Okay, not seeing any. Thanks very much for that. We will jump to new space, and we've got Johnny on that.
Thank you, Councillor Bradford, and thanks for that update, Charlotte. I'm also on the Affordable Housing Task Team, and the Listen and Learn tour has been very, very enlightening. As far as new space goes, which Gila is also on, we had a brainstorming session last week on Wednesday, the 13th, which was generously hosted by Benjamin over at Lynx Music. We talked a bit about talking further about the idea of forming a new not-for-profit that could follow the model of a community land trust, some kind of body that could help take performance, rehearsal, and reporting space out of the commercial real estate market and ensure its perpetual affordability. As we found over in the new Affordable Housing Task Team, the issue is there's not a ready-to-go music nonprofit with the capacity to take on any kind of new space project right now. But we've had some interesting discussions with the Community and Cultural Spaces Trust, or the CCST, who Charlotte just mentioned, who are based in Ward 9 and have this $2 million trust to acquire space in that ward. And I've actually also connected them with the Performing Arts Lodge to see if there's an opportunity to collaborate there. So it's an example of TMAC playing that really important connector role between people in the community. On the topic of crossover, another thing we discussed at our brainstorm last week was how the work of the New Space Task Team might cross over with the work of the city's new Sound Check program, which has a similar mandate in terms of both preserving existing music space and also helping innovate and develop new space. So we did a really fun whiteboarding exercise at Lynx Music. And through that exercise, we decided to focus on some actionable items for the next year. The first is to expand zoning to include venues in areas that might, for example, in areas that might currently be zoned for employment industrial. The second was to expand the tax credit to include rehearsal spaces and recording studios, for example, and also increase the tax credit from 50% to 100%. The third is to make development charges in HST exempt on cultural builds. Fourth, look at ways we can talk with PFR about easing the restrictions on park permitting for live music events, which is very timely related to the last agenda item. The fifth would be to partner with Create.to to establish a music program for their pipeline of projects. The sixth, establish an inventory of current spaces and venues. And it sounds like, according to Mike Tanner, there is now a Create TO inventory that we can refer to, which is very exciting, a very exciting development. And lastly, to number 7, to assess the actual space needs of the music community. And that relates to the last 2 items relate to the work that Wavelength is going to be doing in the new year with our Canada Council funded study into music space needs around a hypothetical Toronto music hub. And we've brought on Jean Lesage of Lesage Arts Consulting, who's going to be working as a facilitator, and we'll be kicking off this study in the new year. So that is the update from the New Space Task Team, and welcome any questions.
Thanks, Johnny. Checking in the room here. Oh, Mike Tanner's going to jump in.
Yeah, it's thanks, Johnny, and thanks, Charlotte. Before that, I just want to mention there's a lot of information, great information coming in these updates. What I'll do, if people would like, after the fact, is go back to each of these team spokespeople and ask you for just a quick bullet pointy summary, which I can then just sort of send out, because it might be a little bit more detailed than the minutes from the meeting that clerk sends out. There's some fairly granular points here. So if you don't have to worry about jotting down notes, I'll send around a summary. There's some good stuff going on. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Any other questions or comments? All right. Very good. Thanks for that, Johnny. That's good work. I like the Create TO piece as well. We will jump over here to venue health. We've got Tracy good to go on that.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So since our September TMAC meeting, the venue task team, which is Lisa, Sean, and I, has been focused on the new municipal licensing structure and the license categories, which will impact live music venues and which will officially come into effect on January 1st. So city staff has continued to emphasize that establishments will have time to transition to a new license type if required, and will apply to the new licensing category when their existing license is up for renewal. Currently, city staff, along with the TMAC members, are working on materials to help operators determine which license they require, and are developing fillable forms that will be easy to navigate and will guide applicants through the requirements to make the license transition as easy on operators as possible. And that template, or those templates, will be shared publicly by the end of the year. So our shared goal is to make sure that the requirements for providing noise and crowd control plans are not too daunting to the operators. And as I understand it, the venue task team will continue to have opportunities to provide feedback regarding these templates before the implementation begins in January. We've already had one round of input regarding how the templates can be used as sort of a gentle guide to demonstrate what's required by operators in the application process. As we reported at our last meeting, the music office had previously organized a meeting with representatives from the various municipal departments that are involved in venue licensing in one way or another. So that included Toronto Fire, MLS, the Building Department, and Zoning, as well as the AGCO. And we'd requested that meeting because we wanted to better understand what the implications of the new entertainment place of assembly license, the category that's intended by MLS to capture most live music venues, would be on the capacity of existing and new venues, since we anticipate that many existing establishments are going to want to know if the entertainment place of assembly license will allow for legal capacity increases. Since space that was previously designated for tables and seated dining will now be able to be used for entertainment. So the venue task team sees this as very important, since higher capacity allowance will directly impact the sustainability of venues, since more bodies in a room allows for increased ticket and hospitality income. So with the information gleaned at this meeting, we've been working on a flowchart that will guide both new and existing operators through the process of determining if a capacity increase is possible, and if so, how to navigate the process in obtaining that increase. But because there are many departments involved, it can be quite confusing as the order of the steps that need to be taken. So with Jacqueline and Mike's help, we've been asking questions of MLS, Toronto Fire, and the AGCO to put together a step-by-step guide that we hope will also include department contacts at each step in case operators have questions as they go through the process. After another meeting earlier this week with MLS staff and the music office, we're continuing to document our questions, and we'll meet again with representatives from the various departments and the AGCO in a couple of weeks to make sure that we're on the right track with this flowchart. And depending how complex this flowchart becomes, the music office with TMAC input may work towards a separate section of the Good Neighbor Guide for late night businesses and or a standalone booklet that would fully explain the process for determining venue capacity. We'll figure out later if that's required. At the last meeting, we mentioned that while the new expanded activity entertainment place of assembly license will require proof of insurance coverage, there will be a process by which venues that are unable to obtain the required $1 million in insurance can apply to have that requirement waived. And MLS staff are currently developing a form for that waiver application. So to help make the licensing transition less onerous, we're also working on gathering some contacts for architects who might be able to provide drawings at rates that would be more affordable to smaller businesses or operators. So by the next TMAC meeting, we hope to have that flow chart ready to share with the wider committee so that members can share it with their venue contacts. The music office will also be helping to share the information, and we'd greatly appreciate the assistance of the counselors' offices and BIAs in this effort. Our team did talk about the fact that the first venues to apply for an increase in capacity under the new entertainment place of assembly license might provide an opportunity for our team to follow the process and help these organizations or operators navigate it so that we can refine our flowcharts if need be. So we'll keep reporting back about how this process is going and keep everyone in the loop. If anyone has any questions?
Thanks, Tracy. Very comprehensive. Thanks for all that work in those meetings. Any questions for Tracy? Not seeing any. I will say thanks for all that heavy lifting and looking forward to the update. We will jump to, I think we have Tanisha. Yeah, Tanisha on career development.
Thank you. So the career development team, we have a couple of updates. So first up is we're looking to create and develop a comprehensive list of organizations offering supports and resources for the creative industries. This will live on the city website. The team is currently compiling key organizations, including grant providers, mentorship programs, and professional associations. So if anyone here has any organizations or anything from that list to add, please send to anyone on the team. Once it's finalized, the next steps will be to align it with the city guidelines for publication. Next, networking events and support. So as you all know, the music office hosted an intern event with post-secondary student graduates in February. The purpose was to connect new graduates with industry professionals to explore internship opportunities. Given the event success, we'll be hosting the same event again in February. And again, a call out if you all, or if you know anyone in the music industry looking to hire an intern, definitely shoot an email to Jacqueline or anyone on the task team. And we're looking to host this again in early February. And then last but not least, the Breaking Down Silos event. It was a networking event that we hosted during the TD Jazz Fest that received really great feedback from participants who really found the event meaningful and achieved the goal of connecting folks across various sectors. So there was some positive feedback around adding, an acoustic performance, a different venue space, and incorporating conversation prompts to kind of make the conversations kind of flow easily. Again, not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're trying to do this again next year during another cultural event. And as that progresses, we'll keep you all posted on what that looks like. And that's about it.
That's great, and congrats on pulling all those people together. That's super helpful. Let's see if there's any questions here. Okay, not seeing any. Thanks very much for the update, Tanisha. We'll jump to our last table, and this is Melissa Vincent on promotion and tourism.
Hi there. Can everyone hear me okay?
We gotcha.
It's hard to resist. I feel like I always have to check. I think what's really interesting about our group is that in a lot of ways, the sort of basis of it is trying to really get a better sense of how folks in our shared music ecosystem learn about what we're doing and feel like we can action on some of those learnings and feel like we're connected in a way where the dissolution of some really critical media infrastructure in the city over the last couple of years has made that a challenge. And I think it's interesting having this meeting now in November, sort of looking back on a lot of priorities that we decided as a group at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of this sort of session of TMAC. And I think there just being a lot of really exciting learnings that we've taken. I think that the sort of elephant in the room, the way that in terms of promotion, in terms of people in the city, being able to move with a shared rhythm, and members of our team working really directly on Taylor Swift's arrival and residency, trying to really learn from what felt organic. And I think seeing that across a lot of different spaces, which has brought us to a position of trying to go back to our initial list and reevaluating what feels like a new priority and trying to really think about how a lot of fantastic grassroots initiatives that members of our team have observed, they've had sort of hands-on experience working on, and things that have really resonated on a broader scale can really inform some of our directives moving on in the future. Maybe Sarah wants to speak a little bit more about some of the things you've noticed and
Sure. We're tag teaming on this a little bit. I'm just going to give an update on a couple key projects that we've been working on. And by we, I mean Destination Toronto and the city in collaboration. Obviously, I'm on this committee, but it's also a function of my job, which is an honor. So Music Compass, we had reported to the committee previously on that pilot project. Alok had done a presentation. That's wrapped up now. As a reminder, that pilot project was highlighting local music in select neighborhoods. It was led by the City of Toronto in partnership with DT. Happy to report there's been over 13,000 engagements with that pilot so far, and we had heard anecdotally in the last meeting that actually did translate into folks coming into some of those venues, which is great. The teams will be meeting in the coming weeks to review the pilot and the results and discuss what the future looks like for that initiative. So stay tuned on that. And of course, Miss Taylor Swift, we have seen the whole city step up to make this concert series a real true citywide event. It was our goal to capitalize on really trying to make an impact for these fans, many of whom were choosing to come to a concert, not choosing to come to Toronto. So we saw a really tremendous opportunity to really welcome those individuals and spread the word about how Toronto is a great place to come for music. So, we've seen, as I'm sure you all have, the moment of arrival at the airports through transit, the teams at Metrolinx and TTC stepping up significantly, our hotels, restaurants, all the way along our streets to Rogers Centre. There's been this massive, powerful sense of arrival and welcome and really focusing on that ease of navigation for those thousands of visitors who have descended on the city last weekend and this weekend. As mentioned before, to encourage those fans and visitors to explore deeper throughout the city, Destination Toronto created a microsite and included on that all of the different Toronto themed experiences to help those fans become, as we call it, more enchanted with the city. And we launched a fan scavenger hunt, driving those folks across the city to 13 specific locations. And participants were eligible to win prizes. And there's also a charitable component to that, to the community music schools. We've seen about 600 check-ins at all of those locations in that first weekend. So hopefully we can match that, if not exceed it, this weekend as well. We did, as a test pilot with the city, we placed QR codes in the vicinity of Rogers Centre along Taylor Swift Way and in other high traffic areas with direct links to that website to help those fans navigate Toronto. And as reported, I'm sure you've all seen in the news, we reported that there's expected $282 million in economic impact. $152 million of that is in direct spending, with nearly 93% of that coming from out-of-town visitors. So it's a significant boost, obviously, to our economy. And just a note back on that charitable piece, though that number doesn't take into account the charitable contributions that come with these concerts. Many of you probably know this, but Taylor Swift herself is quite a philanthropist, and there's a significant halo effect on local charities. Typically, it's the food banks and shelters, but there have been other significant fan-inspired giving that we've seen, with fans organizing fundraising drives to the food banks, as well as to local LGBTQ youth charities and the community music schools of Toronto. So I just want to give a kudos to the whole team at the city, because they've done an incredible job preparing for the arrival of Swift Nation. Deputy Mayor, I don't know if you're still in the room, but you have led a tremendous team, and there's been an enormous overwhelming positive feedback from all of the visitors, and it sure feels good to be a host for these concerts. So thanks to everybody who's been involved in that. Lots of great lessons and inspiration for us to continue to work collaboratively and roll out this visitor experience, not necessarily to the scale, but definitely to make sure that as we're welcoming visitors to Toronto, they're aware of all of the great things that they can do, particularly in the music space. So,
thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Melissa. Big numbers. It's nice to feel good about something in Toronto. That's positive. Any other questions on this piece? All right. Anyone going to the shows? Okay, Sarah, very good. All right, nice. I think we'll wrap it there. Are there any questions on the item more broadly? Anyone want to speak to this? What we heard? Okay. Well, no further speakers. I'll just have a motion to receive the item. Okay, Charlotte, all in favor? Very good, carried. Our last item is just staff updates. We're going to hear from Mike Tanner. I'd also acknowledge Jacqueline is back with us after a little time away and here in the room, and it's just fabulous. Got some clapping there on the screen. Great to have her back. So I'm glad you're here, but I'll turn it over to Mike and Jacqueline if they want to run us through anything before we depart.
Thanks, Councillor. I'll keep my remarks really brief, and I think we can get out of here by noon as advertised. Just a few things I want to highlight, particularly elements that have direct connectivity to TMAC members and how I see us interacting with and being supported with and supporting TMAC members on a few of these things. The work on the night economy has been continuing, led by our Visitor Economy Office, our colleagues Alok Sharma and Lauren McCallum, particularly for EDC, and a whole slew of different reps from different divisions. most recent update of the Good Neighbor Guide for Late Night Businesses, which we've heard referred to a couple of times here today, was actually digitally published. It's available online, the updated version as of last month. So if you go to the City of Toronto's Night Economy webpage, there's a lot of resources there, including the latest Good Neighbor Guide. The Good Neighbor Guide, for those of you who haven't printed out a copy and have been sleeping with it under your pillow, is a multifaceted document with a lot of different sections for mostly late night bricks and mortar businesses. And what we would ask of you, TMAC members, would be aware of it, check it out, have a look at it, go to the website. You can search Night Economy City of Toronto, it'll pop up and there'll be a link to a PDF, a downloadable PDF. And secondly, please help us to distribute it. To send links to people you know who are working in the night economy, whether as promoters, venue operators, festival organizers. As I say, it relates a little bit more to bricks and mortar businesses, but there's sort of adjacencies to other kinds of things as well. As we've heard mentioned when Scott Barrett was speaking about It's Okay, and Johnny referenced it again earlier, we now do have this vast and sort of as yet untamed inventory of city-owned properties from our friends at Corporate Real Estate Management, CREM. It's huge. It's got thousands of properties literally on it. And the idea is that we, EDC Music Office, along with CREM and our friends at Create.to, are going to try to winnow it down and focus so that we have something that's shareable and usable, that lists appropriate city-owned properties that are potentially leasable, that are in a state of good repair, that are not currently being used as community centers or swimming pools or public libraries and the like. So we may be looking to TMAC members for some help with scoping out some of that filtered list once we have it in a usable format. So stay tuned for that. The report on the night economy as it currently sits, the city's work for the internal and external working groups, is coming to Economic and Community Development Committee next week on November 26th. It'll be part of the agenda at ECDC, as it's called here. There may be some debate and discussion. There will certainly be some discussion around that report, and the report is a summary of where things stand. So if you're interested in coming by City Hall, probably be in this committee room here actually that we're talking about in right now, or online, Economic Community Development Committee, the Night Economy Report on the 26th. And we are working with our Night Economy champion, Councillor Ainsley on the screen there, on a town hall, the follow-up town hall, Night Economy Town Hall, likely for March of 2025, and there'll be more confirmation around that as the date gets closer. Moving on, the Music Office goals are really focused around supporting and helping the work of TMAC, around delivering our music strategy, and together and with the help of many of you folks, we've been making some progress. We will be looking for support and help from you as the live music venue tax program rolls out again for its 6th year in 2025. Applications will open up for existing venues early in the new year. What I would ask of TMAC members is if you have a suspicion that there may be a new live music venue that books live music approximately 3 times a week, let us know about it. We do an outreach to everybody who's been in the program already, who has had a tax reduction as a result of their activities and operations to date, but we always hit up councillors and say, hey, here's what we have in your ward. Are we missing anything? We look at BIAs, and if you folks who are involved in the industry have an idea that there may be somebody that you think of that's fairly new, just let us know. It's better we hear about it twice than not at all. And the last thing I'll close on, and look at that, it's 12 o'clock, is we're at the end, close to the end of 2024, and this term of council goes until mid Q2, Q3 of 2026, which means that there's another full year and a piece left for TMAC to accomplish things. Essentially, I would say we've probably got about 14 months from now. What happens is, and Councillor Bradford, you can jump in if I'm messing this up, but when council breaks in the summer of 2026 with an election expected in the fall of 2026, after that point, there isn't a lot or anything really that TMAC can bring forward to go through the committee structure through council. So really we've got until Q1, Q2 of 2026 to really make strides. And I've heard a lot of great talk today, and we're aware of a lot of the goals and the initiatives that you folks in different task teams are working on and bringing forward. We're also doing some things that are running in parallel, and in some cases are the same things. So I would just urge us all together to watch the clock, because there isn't as much time left as we may think. And it would be great to make some really tangible, noticeable progress on some of these things that we're all talking about, so that we're not hearkening back to things that the city did or that TMAC advocated for 5 years ago when we say, what are we all doing and what have we accomplished? That it's something that's very recent and very immediate. And again, I'm hearing some really exciting things, and we're aware of all that. We're here to support you. And if there are any TMAC members, task teams, or individuals who want to speak separately about, aspirational goals or things that you've thought of that maybe aren't part of the matrix of activities yet, we're definitely down to speak. So as we close out these set of meetings in 2024, let's keep an eye on that calendar and keep moving ahead. We know TMAC's function is to advise the city, quote unquote, but it's great to see the level of engagement and the actual work and the accomplishments that are on the docket and that have already been done and that may be done before we wrap up this term of council. I'll close with that.
Jeez, Mike, giving me anxiety, all that election talk. Whoa. All right. Still a while, but I guess the months do tick away. Any questions, comments for Mike, Jacqueline?
Mike, what time is the meeting on the 26th, the ECDC? Do you know?
It's a 9:30 start, Lisa. I don't have the agenda in front of me, so I don't know which item the night economy report is. What often happens is that the agenda will get shuffled sometimes depending on whether there are items being held or whether the speakers or confidential attachments. But it will begin at 9:30 and generally runs, well, you guys know this better than I do, most of the day.
Thanks.
Great food in the cafeteria here at City Hall.
Yeah, make a day out of it. Speaking, Jeremy, you want to jump in there? Jeremy, your audio might not be connected. It shows you're off mute, but we're not hearing you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
We got you.
Okay. Just to Mike's last point, I'm on the partnerships response. I think it's called the partnerships team, and we're getting some things done. But maybe a couple of the things that were on our task group was to speak to building partnerships with upstream to more the federal and provincial groups, and also within the City of Toronto groups. And maybe if you could just sort of help us, give us some ideas as to how to better make that happen within our group, that would help us. And if anyone else has any ideas that want to contribute so that we can make that happen in the next 14 months, what we would like all to see happen.
We probably best to take that offline, Jeremy. But I'm just going to refresh my memory by looking at the particular point you're talking about here: partnerships, government, corporate, foreign industry. Some of these points for the general industry, health, advocacy, and partnerships is the name of the task team, are a little bit more conceptual than tangible. And I think it would be worthwhile maybe having a separate conversation with the members of your group where we can maybe take a look at some of these points and come up with, chunk them up a little bit so that they're less vague and more tangible and more kind of action oriented. These were generated by all of you and all of us together, and it's partly why I said what I said there. I think maybe in some cases, some of the task teams, we should sort of sit down and really focus on what we think are low-hanging fruit or achievable or tangible or things that can actually be worked on in a measurable way. If it's connecting with provincial and federal counterparts, we should talk about what that means, whether it's government or industry or staff to staff, and where we can go from that. But I think first step would be I'll pull together a video meeting with your group, and we can sort of look at each of these tasks and see where we go next on that. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm making some progress on the venue stuff that I've been working on, but I think it'd be great to expand that.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Why don't we wrap there? Just before we go, I need motion to receive the item. All in favor? Carried. I also have a motion here to excuse the absence of a couple of our colleagues. We'll put that on the screen. And that's just fine. All in favor? Carried. Okay, that concludes our business for today. I would say thanks for all the work so far this term, and as Mike outlined, there's lots more to do that we can do, and we've got 14 months to do it, which is not zero. So motivation to take that into the new year, and as you all depart for time with family and friends over the holidays, I hope you enjoy that, have an opportunity to reflect and catch up on some sleep and whatever you need to do, and have a joyous holiday season. And we will be back February 18th, back in the saddle. See some of you here in person, maybe see some of you over the holidays. But thanks again for all your help and support. Really appreciate what you're doing for the city and for the community. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.